Hey folks, Steve here with another Dark Valley video. I guess as of this video, we start the second half of a campaign game. We'll be looking at turn 23 this turn, and again, that starts the second half of the game, the full campaign from turns 1 through 44. And I thought I'd take some time before we really get into things to kind of stop and just appreciate where we're at in the game. So, we played a lot of turns getting to this point. Yeah, we did kind of restart from, what was it, turn 12 or whatever for Case Blue. And now we've played, a number of turns to get to this point. And we're about reaching the point where we could be looking at, like, the Operation Citadel scenario if we were playing just a scenario game. But, of course, we've continued on in the campaign style. And I want to put some reflections in here at the beginning of this video just on the way the game's gone so far, just in terms of the operational, progress that each side has made and kind of where we're at. And kind of with that, I can't help but bring up the book that I've been reading along the way, which is, I've shown it on video before, Cataclysm, The War on the Eastern Front, 41 to 45, by Keith Cummins, I assume is how that's pronounced. And this is a good book. I'm about halfway through it. And basically what I had done before recording this video, or starting to record this video, was I was actually ahead in the game than I was in the book in terms of chronology. And I caught myself up with the holidays. I had some downtime with the family and some quiet time I could read, and I caught myself up a little bit to just around the turns that we're playing here now, maybe like a month still behind, but reading through the book has helped me appreciate kind of what's been going on in this campaign so far. I will say that the book is at times very dry because it just is saying, and then this army fought this other Soviet army over here by this town that's not necessarily on this map, and it's repeating a lot of that, but you still get really good nuggets of information about the decision making and the leaders, and that's the parts of the book that I really like, and can, it is neat to compare, talking about taking the cities, the smaller towns, it can be, you get lost kind of in the shuffle, but the taking of the critical areas, you can kind of map to what's happening in the game, and it's been fun to do that and kind of see, what decisions have I made that's different. And I'll say kind of with that, we're as the Axis still east of Kharkov here. The front line is way out beyond even Voronezh still, where we're getting about to the point in the historical timeline where the Axis had kind of, they had their disaster at Stalingrad, which we did not have. So historically, the Axis would have partially taken Stalingrad, but then would have been basically pushed back with several units worth of Axis. What am I saying? Several units worth of units. Basically, an army, the Sixth Army, which was encircled and trapped around Stalingrad and was ultimately destroyed. That didn't happen to my Axis, right? I basically said, no, I'm not even going to try. Stalingrad looks tough. I don't have the operational momentum to get there. I'm just not going to do it. And so I saved myself there, maybe, compared to the historical counterpart where they ended up losing a lot of men and material fighting in Stalingrad, which we avoided. And because of that, the Soviets ended up being able to push them all the way back to, the line that's right around here. You can, if I zoomed in a little bit, you would start to see, these series of dotted lines are marking out, the Operation Citadel start, which is tied up in the battle at Kursk. Now, we're well east of that right now, and so we're not going to have, that same Battle of Kursk. That's just not going to happen the same way now. It's a little bit different. And so we didn't see, and of course this is coming off the top of my head because I just read this part in the book. We won't see Manstein's Kharkov, Donetsk campaign, we don't even need to do that because we still hold Kharkov down here. And let's see, what else was going on? Basically, the Soviet retaking of Kursk in that area around Kharkov, and then Manstein had a counterattack that enabled them to take Kharkov back, but led to the Kursk salient forming, and then ultimately Operation Citadel played out. Well, we haven't had much of that. It's really been, I rather than extended my lines even down into the Caucasus, I ended up only getting so far and then pulling back, where historically the Axis were down here messing around. And so I'll say I've probably played conservatively, but in some ways that has helped the Axis kind of keep a lot of their units from being torn apart. And I haven't, as the Axis suffered an incredible loss, like I think the historical participants did around Stalingrad, and just the activity down here with Operation Uranus and Little Saturn and those efforts of the Soviets that did hurt the Axis capability to fight. I think there's still a lot of fight left in the Axis at this point. Now, obviously, the actions by Manstein at Kursk showed that the Axis could still operate, but after that, I mean, the Axis was purely on the defensive. We've already assumed that defensive position, but we're holding much better overall, I think, positions for it. But it's interesting that the book, wants to say, okay, well here, and we've been talking about it in the game here, right? The book is saying, well, hey, you look at this time frame here. This is where it all, that's the first half of the Eastern Front War. We're now entering the second half of the Eastern Front War, and that is going to be characterized by the Axis never having offensive capability. Really, it's going to be all about the Soviets. Kursk really being the last effort. The book kind of calls Manstein's Donetsk campaign sort of the last real action, offensive action, successful offensive action. Kursk will be a tremendous failure historically, and we'll have to see, will we see something similar? It could mean that because I've kept the Axis from suffering a atrocious mistake and failure, that this could ultimately lead to, in game terms, an Axis victory by delaying the Soviet advance. Or I'll screw up somewhere along the way and the Soviets will indeed get to Berlin by game end. We'll have to see how it all plays out. So, I don't know, just interesting stuff. I think I would recommend, like if you were playing this game or going through the campaign, I might recommend this book. I mean, if you're just looking for a book on the Eastern Front, I think the challenge of this book is, like I said, it can be dry at times. You'll go, there'll be really great sections where they talk about things that are like, I don't know, more nebulous, instead of just saying like an army went here and an army went here and an army went here. There are whole paragraphs of it, just the sentences are just that this force went to here and this force went to here and this force went to here, and you're reading that for pages, and it really isn't. It is really hard to stay engaged. But there are good nuggets in it, and again, playing alongside, playing this game alongside the book has been a nice, back and forth, because I can compare so much. I think they go well together because the book is really an operational book, and we're playing an Okay, I think my camera is telling me I need to stop rambling, because right as I was getting through that talk, my camera had a problem and stopped recording. So yeah, operational game, operational focused book, that go well together, but I think the camera's telling me it's time to start playing the game, so let's get into it and try to get through turn 23, and we'll see how it goes. Turn 23 is kind of an interesting turn for a couple of reasons. We get some marker, we get a marker that we've not seen before, and that is the fortified zone marker. So, I just dropped the fortified zone marker. So the way that this works is, the Soviets can place this in an in-supply, I think it's town or city, and if we were playing the Operation Citadel scenario, the Battle of Kursk, this guy would be in Kursk. It would be placed in Kursk. And this represents basically a enhanced fortification region, right? So as historically, as they were preparing, the Soviets were preparing defenses in the Kursk salient. They put a lot of defenses there, a lot of mines and fortified areas. And so the game, the campaign game anyway, gives you the marker to decide how you want to use it. So again, if you're playing the scenario, it's set up for you. It's in the cursed salient. It's there for obvious reasons. There to defend the salient, right? But when you get it in the campaign game, obviously you may not have a cursed salient. You might not have any real salient at all that makes sense to defend in that way. So the rule book kind of gives it to you well. I mean, what you would do is you would set this down, and in the first turn that it's there, basically any enemy combats against units within so many hexes of the marker are shifted one column to the left. The following turn, you flip it, and it is now 2 shifts to the left, which is very powerful. I mean, that's incredible, right? It would turn a 3-to-1 to a 1-to-1, or a 6-to-1 to a 4-to-1. But either way, I mean, that's a significant shift in defensive capability. It's really good, valuable. But if you look at my front line, there's no real salient that is obvious that, like, oh, here, I've got to increase my defenses here, right? There's a couple of places you say, oh, it might be good to have something here, but for me, not super valuable. You have alternatives. So I could, instead, turn the fortified marker in for 5 extra replacement points. Now, I have nothing in the dead pile as the Soviets, so that would not be very valuable to me either. So what to do, right? Doesn't seem particularly useful. But somebody in the comments of a previous video, or maybe it was on Board Game Geek, mentioned that, hey, what you can do is place the fortified zone marker somewhere along your line, wherever, and that will help that region be defensive, which may allow me to pull units away from there. If I got double stacked units or whatever, I can actually pull a few of those guys off with rail movement and concentrate them where I really actually want to attack. So either way, I can still get value out of the fortified zone marker, but I might have to do that. It seems to be the only real option that I have. I don't have an obvious salient. That's a real problem for the Soviets. They have a pretty even line across the board, even with a couple of goofy gaps that have manifested. It's not really a big deal. And again, the 5 extra replacement points not really helping me because I'm topped off. All my guys are, for the most part, good to go, and the huge amount of replacement points I'm already getting will probably be enough to keep me well and set up for the future here, or at least for now. So I'm gonna need to do that, but with that, I'm gonna have to decide where do I want to attack. And truth be told, I think my real options here are I think what I really want to do is push along here and push down here. Let's see if I can get down here, over here, and just start pushing this way and force these guys to try to get away or slip through Kharkov. If I just aim my forces towards Kharkov, I mean, I think that would be a good way to cut guys off. I could even split forces down here and sort of cut these guys off. But that would be the goal here, the true execution of deep battle, to, if I can, cut huge parts of the Axis line apart. Now that's very deep. I don't have the unit coverage probably to get that deep. But I need to make it a tough situation for the Axis so that they have to spend their actions getting the heck out of there or getting into better ground. I would love to just cut like a third of the Axis army into an isolated position and remove them, because that would then make the game super imbalanced towards the Soviets as they go racing to the west. But that seems to be the best way to move forward, is to try to hit those cracks, those weak points somewhere along the line, and I can see some areas where that can happen. What I need to do is rail one of my HQs down here to do it, though. So I think Zhukov is in the area already. He can help get these strong attacks going over here. I need to get Stavka down here to get these units their full combat capability and execute. We don't get the good actual combat action chits until 44. I think I talked to that in another video. When we get that, then hey, it's going to be great. We'll be attacking everywhere. But having that limited attack doctrine right now is hurting our ability to make gains here. Something else that the book covers and is interesting to read about. The development of, hey, the Soviet officer situation got a lot better than it was. They managed to get good at defending, and then the second piece of that puzzle was learning offensive doctrine, and once they started learning that, that's when things started to improve even better, where they were pushing back the Axis, who was already drained of manpower and everything else. I will say, playing this game and reading the book and everything else, so much of this I'm seeing through the centerpiece of this is the evolution of the Soviet army from, the units that were getting their teeth kicked in at the beginning of the game to steadily increasing capability, both on the units on the map side of things, where we start seeing these tank guard armies and the regular infantry guard armies just being awesome and replacing units and just getting better units on the board, to also that increased operational capability and command structure with the improved action chit recipes that start coming in for the Soviets. So just really interesting seeing that development and progression, while the Axis kind of stays the same throughout most of the game, but ultimately their tactical and technical superiority starts to be chipped away until they collapse. So I don't know, just the whole story of the game is just interesting. The whole story of what happened in history is interesting here. So I'm going to stop rambling. God, we've now had like 15 minutes of intro. We're going to get into it. I'm going to take care of the reinforcements here in a second. I'm going to stop recording to make sure the camera doesn't freak out. And then I'm going to show what's coming in this turn for the reinforcements. Okay, well, this is what we get for reinforcements. The Axis just get their Manstein chit back, which we will put on the... we'll put with the action chits, because ultimately that's where it'll be used if we decide to use it. Everything else is very much oriented around the Soviets. As usual, we have our fortified zone marker, which we already talked about. We have the holdover mechanized corps from a previous turn, and then we get a couple more this turn, but coincidentally enough, we get three I think I said corps instead of guard. So 2 more guard mechanized corps, and we get 3 regular non-guard mechanized corps. So I guess it worked out that I couldn't place this one, because this turn these 3 normal guys are never going to see the board. They're just going to be immediately replaced by the guard versions of those, and they're going to be placed on the map instead. And then we also have a guard corps that we're going to put on the map, and we've just got to find some of those 1-4s to peel off the map, and it's going to be it's getting hard to find a good place to pull those guys off, because there's so few of them now. But we got to do what we got to do, and I might have to then rail units to plug where they were at in the line if they were sitting there by themselves, which is kind of a pain to worry about. Okay, so when it comes to the fortified zone, I think I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to exchange it for 5 replacement points. We're going to put it on the board somewhere. I don't know where that is yet, but we will look to do that. In terms of replacements, I will say that this turn, I think the Axis get something. If I remember from my last video, they don't have to remove anything this turn. Right. Flip half, reduce strength, non-SS Panzer divisions to full strength. So we'll have to figure out how many we actually have, and then we'll replace half of those. I'll talk to that when we come back from the cut. Otherwise, I'm going to place these guys, place the fortified zone, and then I'll get the, whatever 30 replacement points that it'll probably end up being for the Soviets, which, again, at this point, I don't have anything in the dead pile to replace, but I do have some weakened armies that are off the front lines that will get beefed up to full strength. So for the Soviets, this is all gravy. They just need to get, they need to figure out how to concentrate their firepower in the right place at this point. Losses are not an issue. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take care of the strategic movement stuff so we can get units where we need them to be for the action. And then when we come back, I'll review the situation, and we'll go to the action chit recipe for the turn, and talk through that. This is a Axis initiative turn. In fact, one of the last ones that they will have for the rest of the game. They'll have to decide what they want to do about that. So we'll be back for you in just a second. Okay, here we are after all of our movements and adds. So again, the Soviets had more replacement points than they could actually use. I still have some reduced armies on the front line, but some had been behind and got put up to full strength. I ended up getting the Panzer replacements in. We had 4 Panzer replacements, and that they got added up all fine and good. For the strategic move, I feel like, in retrospect, I may not have been utilizing the strategic move for the Axis, the rail movement specifically, to the best effect. I've sort of been using it as a quick move for reinforcements, but I think in a lot of cases what maybe I should have been doing is making sure that my Panzer units were ending a turn on a rail line and then using that rail movement to take those armored units and put them somewhere else where they would be valuable for the next coming turn. And I ended up not really doing that at all. And now it kind of sucks because I got those Panzer replacements and I had pulled some units back off, but I stupidly put them on hexes, not on rail hexes, which means I couldn't move them, which was very foolish of me. So some tremendous mistakes made, and of course by the end of this grand campaign I'm going to look back and have acknowledged all these mistakes, and I'm sure if I were to ever play the grand campaign again, it would be... I would probably play a lot better, obviously, right? This is the first play, so I'm stumbling my way through it, but I definitely see where I've made some mistakes in that regard. For the Soviets, they're just trying to pull up some more armies to the front line and get things situated. I may be able to pull back some of our reduced units off the front line to be replaced, but where I still have reduced armies are sort of up in the north where there's really not much fear of anything happening there, so we may have some wasted replacement points, but all things considered, everything else is going to plan. We have our Guard Corps situated here, and I think what I want to do is use them to come through here. Now, something that I want to do, and I guess I'm going to do it next turn because I had to get certain units in place. What I think I'm going to have to do next turn is, and this is going to matter for what the Soviets do, I think I do need to rail the Stavka HQ down south. I'm not doing it this turn because, like I said, I only get 4 steps, and I think the HQ counts as a step. I think. Let me double check that. I'm reasonably confident. I think so. Maybe. Oh, HQ's leaders may not use rail movement or naval movement. Well, that's really tough because I really need an HQ down south, and at this point it's going to take so long for them to get there. Yeesh. Yeah, I don't know. I may have screwed up putting the HQs that close now that the strategic situation has evolved where I want to get an HQ down here, but I don't know. That's a bummer. That they can't use rail movement. That sucks. Anyway, the units are in place as best as I could get them, and I think we'll have an interesting turn. I did put the fortified zone marker over here. Now, I'm not expecting the Axis to be doing a whole lot of attacking over here, but just this will enable me to pull some of those units and adjust them a little bit so that I can put them where I need more firepower, even if that may not be for a little while. Like that fortified zone marker is going to stay there for a while, right? It doesn't go away. There's a town underneath that stack, by the way. That's why it's there. But for as long as it's sitting there, I can safely move a few units away from there. You can see I've got some of my guard armies over here, and if they don't make some valuable attacks here this turn, then I can maybe think about pulling them down southeast and supporting the push towards Orel and Bryansk. So we'll see if that works out. For the action chits this turn, here's what we got. Logistics as usual. The Axis gets Manstein back to use. I guess we'll have to decide when or how we'll use him if we do, so he's really going to go into the asset box. At least that's where I'm going to put him. The chits are the same as last turn otherwise, so the Axis has their mover combats. They get one Panzer HQ. I've chosen the second again, just because it's nearby Orel and Bryansk, and I think that may be an important sector along the line. It has been for the last couple of turns even, just the fighting around Orel and the Soviet pushes to try to find a way through. And then the Soviets are going to get their move, their combat, Stavka Zhukov, and the Stavka marker. I still have 3 tank corps in Stavka Reserve. I will still hold on to those. What may need to happen is if we've blown open a hole over here, I can get them, if I move these guys over here, empty out Tula, I can potentially bring them in Tula, and then have them leap forward and help exploit a combat. And when we start getting the deep battle chits back, I think that's going to be, we need that. It truly is, like, I kind of need the Soviet command structure to catch up to the army on the board. I really need those better chits that allow us to do more stuff, but for now, we'll have to take what we can get and just hurt the line. Before we get into the rest of the action here, the Axis is going to get to go first. They'll have to decide what they want to do, either move or combat or the Panzer activation. I'm not sure which. But before we even get to that, I need to take a look at something on here. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have been ignoring this on the chart for the longest time, and I guess we'll call it a shortcut of the brain. But on the combat chart, Ted Racer pointed this out, and I had to go find it again. Let's see if I can get it to focus. Focus. There we go. The no effect. The Soviet player may accept no effect result roll, or we're losing focus again. Why is that? Here. Come on. There we go. The Soviet player may accept no effect result or roll again. A second NE is automatically treated as an AL1. So, I've been ignoring that. I just completely didn't, I don't know, I overlooked it. So there have been times where I've gotten an NE result that I could have re-rolled, but maybe it's a good thing I haven't been using it, because it could have meant a lot more AL1s, where I'm losing a lot more steps, but now it kind of feels like the time. I'm getting so many replacement points, F it, let's go for it, right? Though it will not, I'll just point out, that mechanic is not going to help me when the best result I can get is a no result, no effect. So in those cases where I have like a 2-to-1 odds, but a -2 because I'm using Combat Zhukov and they're outside of the HQ range, if the best I can get is a no result, a die roll of 4, because if I roll a 6, -2 is 4, it's not worth re-rolling, right? Because you're only going to lose a unit. It only makes sense to try when you're at 3-to-1 or better, which in case it's like, oh, I got a no result, do I really want to try for that retreat? Or am I just going to take another hit? That's really bad odds. So Ted's given the advice to try again on some of these no effects, but I think some of the time with these Combat Zhukov markers and Combat Stavka markers, where you still get that -2, I think that -2 still makes it pointless to attack in many cases, in most cases even, until these combat factor odds start shifting heavily with the Guard armies entering the fray. So, what are we going to do first? Well, I don't know that movement is actually going to help the Axis very much. Combat now might be an okay option just to knock a few things loose against the Soviets so they can't make strong attacks later. But I'm actually going to have to sit down and figure this out. So I'm going to stop recording here. When we come back, I'll show you what I decided to do with the initiative chit, and we will have taken that action. And I'll explain it. See you in a second. Okay, so I did a move as the Axis. I was contemplating combat, but I think this is going to be an okay turn just to take a step back and deprive the Soviets of some attacks. I mean, it could simply be that the next Chit draw a Soviet move, and then it's pointless. But we have plenty of space to play for with time other than Orel, so as long as we keep a line, and then along here and on down, we're okay. We haven't given up Orel. Even if we did give up Orel, it would probably be okay. So I pulled back a couple of hexes over here that had some attacks that maybe wouldn't have worked anyway. But again, we just deprived that opportunity. And then over here, I pulled back a little bit, and it kind of helped shorten the line and improved some of the weaker hexes down here that are under threat of some very powerful Soviet units. So just really minor adjustments, a little bit of shortening of that line, again, just to help cover the board a little bit better than what we had. And I think that's as good as the Axis can hope for this turn. I think even if they drew their combat chit, there's not much that they really want to do. I think I'm taking on the defensive role a little bit early as the Axis than was historically the case, but I think we have about as good a position as we could hope for, being in front of Voronezh, in front of Orel. We haven't had a huge military disaster. We just couldn't quite get to where we wanted to be, all things considered. Even the stuff in the dead pile really isn't a huge amount of stuff. We have a couple of motorized units that are out that are kind of a bummer, but otherwise we're in okay shape. So, yeah, I think we're okay as the Axis. That was an okay move. We're going to go to the cup now, and we're going to see what we get. And we get logistics. Well, a quick gander at the board shows we're in good shape. Oh, I should point out I have a Panzer unit pulled back here as a mobile reserve. I pulled back the SS Panzer to get replacements next turn. It's going to get replacements anyway, but I didn't want to take the chance that it would be attacked and destroyed in the intervening turn, so I pulled him back. It's something I should mention. I also have moved those Axis Panzer units onto a rail line so they can go somewhere to help, though they're kind of situated right now to be a mobile reserve as well. So kudos to whoever had mentioned that in a comment previously. Yeah, I'm looking for those opportunities to use them as reserves. So logistics, it looks like everybody's in supply. So we're going to simply move along. That's a bummer for the Soviets because they might have had an opportunity to create some supply problems, though not enough right now. It seems to really be that valuable. We're going to go to the cup again immediately, since this was easy, and we get 2nd Panzer activation. This is actually unfortunate. We wanted the 2nd Panzer to come later so that we could make adjustments based on Soviet attacks. I don't think there's anything that the 2nd Panzer can do right now that would be incredibly valuable. But here's what I'll do. I'll take myself off recording for a minute. I will double check the line and we'll come back and I'll, if I've made any adjustments, I'll mention them to you, and then otherwise we'll go back to the cup. Okay, I didn't move anything for the 2nd Panzer activation. I double checked the line, and just in terms of what units I could move around, I shuffled the defensive factors there. There's not much more I can do that will really improve the situation in front of Orel, which is really all I can do with that HQ at the moment. So, the other thing I could contemplate doing is attacking, and the reality is, I'm just moving this out of the way so I can see. I don't think there's much I can do here. I could attack maybe here, 7, be attacked by 11, 20, 25, 28. So it'd be 4 to 1. You'd probably bump it up to... I'd probably bump it up to 8 with air. So then 28 to 8. I could bump that up to 30 to 8. I could make a 4 to 1 attack. Yeah, okay. Alright, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a 4 to 1 attack here. And it'll be using the assault guns, and it will use up a Soviet air marker, all the aid put in, and we get a 4 on a 4 to 1. That's a DR star. So, what do we lose? I guess we'll lose the guard corps. Just because if I fix this guy up, he'll have a Zoc back again. And that's a retreat. Now, do I bother taking the Hex? I think that I do. And that just gives us a little bit more breathing room there. So, okay, first on-screen die roll in a while for combat, I know. But I managed to get 4 to 1 odds with air. I had to combine air with the assault marker. They had an air marker they could use in defense. Still worked out to be 4 to 1 odds. And I got a DR star. So, decent for the Axis there. No losses. They were able to take another Hex. Kind of puts that stack at the mercy of some other units, but it's got pretty decent defense factors, so I don't see that as a major problem. Okay, we're going to go back to the cup. Now, I don't want to do Stavka yet. I think I can wait. And we'll pull the next chit, and it is the Combat Zhukov Combat Stavka. Which, this is probably, man, this is really not a great turn for anybody, because this is probably the worst time, because what we really would have wanted for the Soviets was a move first, so we could get up there and attack. Now we're simply just not going to have a lot of stuff that can attack and attack well. The Stavka marker to its flank just got attacked, and so of the units that it could activate to attack, there's just less that are able to take action. The Stavka marker can activate some stuff to attack. Maybe with these guard armies, they can do some damage, but this was really not great luck for the Soviets. Not great luck for the Axis either this turn, honestly, other than that attack, which went well. But just the way the chits are coming out isn't conducive, I guess, for the Soviets more so than the Axis. But okay, so I'm going to take us off camera. I'm going to look at the unsupplied, the negative penalty attacks, see if there are any that make sense. Then we'll look at the HQs. I'll see what happens there. When we come back, we'll see the aftermath of those combats. Okay, so I did attempt some -2 attacks that gave me some any results, which I re-rolled with some opportunities for better rolls, and I biffed it on pretty much every single one of those rolls. I either, except for like 1 or 2, I biffed it and had an AL1. So there's a couple of places along the line over here where I failed, and up here higher with some of the guard armies I had put up there. With the artillery actually took a couple of steps off the axis, and what attacks I could try, I did here and here. Now I had a massive battle right northeast of Orel, right here, those surrounding stacks, and I ended up something like 82 combat factors to 9 combat factors, and no amount of Axis support was going to change the odds, but all I got was a BL1. So a lot of firepower for, okay, we pinged a loss off the Axis, but not what we wanted to get, because I didn't roll great. I rolled like a 2, which is too bad. The funny thing is, and this is something you have to keep in mind in the rules, is that if you're attacking with guard tank or guard armies, infantry armies, they have to take the first step loss if there's going to be a step loss, or they have to take that first loss. So I've actually taken a number of hits to my strongest units, which means I'm going to need those replacement points next turn so that I can replenish them. So overall, I mean, we've got a couple of units knocked around. Definitely not what we wanted to have happen here in terms of combat effectiveness, but there you go. So yeah, there were a few BL1s, which I guess the Soviets want BL1s compared to nothing, because the Soviets are going to, or the Axis, it's harder to get those steps back, but they didn't do a whole lot of damage this turn, which is going to be a problem. I'm going to go to the cup because I still don't see the Stavka markers being useful yet. I think we need to wait to see what happens with the next couple of rolls. So we'll pull the next chit, and it is, okay, there you go, Soviet move. So Soviet move is going to be, for me, pretty straightforward. I need to get these guys back into the front line position, and if I can, maybe rotate a few guys out to put some weakened guys behind the line for replenishment, especially those guard armies. The fact that they got pinged, I need to get them back into ship shape since they really are hammer. So it's going to take me a minute to do movement, but it'll be pretty quick. When we get back from that, it's going to be either Axis combat and or Stavka is going to happen somewhere in there. And so I guess it's going to depend on the movements we make, and if the Axis combat does anything for us, will that make a difference? If I look ahead to the next turn, the Axis will still have initiative, which means they'll get to go first. And that may matter here, right? So if they move first and the Axis pulls back again, the Soviets, may be out of position yet again. So what's the point in moving into that position now? I don't know. So I'll do what I can to make those movements, and then we'll come back and figure out what we want to do from there. Okay, I did the movements, and you can see things have gotten closed up here a little bit. Pretty straightforward stuff. I managed to get some guys rotated out. You can see down here there's some reduced units pulled back. Over here and here, down here, even up around here, I ended up having to pull a lot of units back. And I went ahead and did Axis combat, and we really only did one fight, and it was right here, and it forced a retreat of that guard corps, and that was about it. So that's why that there's not a complete solid line there, because the Axis did force back after Soviet movement during Axis combat. They forced some guys back. But there's not much they can do here. I mean, they can try to fight, but they're just going to potentially lose steps. They may just want to have the Soviets try to attack them, I guess, and maybe roll poorly, I guess is the idea there. Not much they can do because there's so many combat factors stacked in and around there. I moved the mechanized corps out of Tula. They're just to help cover some of the thinned out lines from me pulling injured units back, so having to do some cycling there. And same even up here. I'm trying to get this guard corps up here so he can stand in line while some of those reduced armies take a step back. But overall, just a pretty straightforward set of activities here. And I did not do Stavka. I don't see a reason to yet, because all it's going to do is I'm going to get 3 tank brigades. They're going to roll in somewhere, and I've already got a lot of stacking in a lot of places. They're not going to be able to do very much damage at all, and are likely just going to hurt themselves. So I'll hold them back for now. It's fine to have a reserve like that that can kind of go anywhere, and we'll keep that up for the time being. Which brings us really to the end of the turn. So all the action chits are done. We play Stavka, but don't really use it for anything, and I can just skip the process of using it. And yeah, that's really it for this turn, guys. So turn 23, the fortified zone marker is in place. We're going to try to make use of that by moving some units around here shortly. The Soviets are putting a lot of power here. They really want to crack open the line there, but I'm doing what I can as the Axis to keep enough defensive factors there to not make it easy. But again, we're talking about attacks involving 80-some combat factors. Something's going to give at some point here with the die rolls. So I think that's it for the turn. Yeah, if we go through the rest, there's no isolation, nothing like that. We're still sitting at 35 victory points. So nothing changes there. I will point out I did move I've started a strategic retreat for Crimea, back a little bit. We weren't going to take. We ended up never really taking. No, sorry for the abrupt cut there. My camera's giving me grief. So yeah, we never took this port. We never took Krasnodar. These guys are going to just be a nuisance for the Russians. I think my camera's running into more issues, so I'll try to be brief here. So I think that's it. That's the end of turn 23. Not a lot of activity. But again, I've just already taken on that defensive posture as the Axis, and they need to hold that defensive posture for, what, another 21 turns? No big deal. 20 turns. So, yeah, we'll call it here, guys. We'll call that a video. Long introduction and reflection, but good stuff to think about. We'll be going into turn 24 in the next video, and that will be the last turn that Axis will ever have initiative in the game. And everything will be falling down from there, right? So we'll look to see how it goes in that one. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. If you're watching this video, you've probably seen the others. And thanks to all you folks that are sticking with this series as we work our way through it. We've still got a ways to go. But I still hope to cover some other games here as we get through the rest of this game. I'm nearing 500 subscribers, which is very exciting. I'll probably do some celebration video once we hit the 500 mark. We're only a few away. So until next time, guys, take care and keep on gaming.